You're listening to the Savoir Faire audio experience.
Are you ready?
The Savoir Faire experience is your guide to everything that has to do with lifestyle. From dating, rides, style, and entertainment. All brought to you by the editor of Savoir Faire magazine, Robert White. Anything goes on this audio experience. So, let's go.
It's still the best.
Welcome to the Savoir Faire audio experience. Thank you guys for subscribing, listening, and chilling with us. We always appreciate bringing you really cool people to meet and talk about. And I'm really excited to talk to this gentleman about, the topic we're going to bring up today. It's very unique. He's not only an author, but also a pastor and has a really kind of cool perspective on just making friends. And that's the part that I was kind of thought was very unique. So I want to introduce you guys to Dr. Carlyle Naylor. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Appreciate it. So Carlyle was just telling me he lives in Arizona. So for the rest of us in Northeast, we can. he's hanging out in the warm weather while the rest of us are freezing. So if he seems a little too bubbly, that's probably why. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about what was kind of happening with you, Carlyle, and learn a little bit about your background. Obviously, you got a very interesting story, but just dive into some things that you've been up to and what kind of led you to today, kind of. I mean, obviously being a pastor, an author, and a handful of other things. Like, what starts that path?
Well, originally I was found my way into educational administration, in vocational education mostly, and then I worked at the university level for private universities, and then from there, after I got an MBA, I found my way into ministry, kind of through the back door, church ministry. I became a pastor through interning, and then went to seminary after that. So I kind of came in backwards. So I've been a pastor for a little over 30 years. And I love it. I love being in my community, pastoring in my community, and I'm a pretty highly relational guy. And so, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, I kind of, as a pastor, stayed as a pastor, but also branched into some life coaching and wrote a book on emotional intelligence. And then about coming up on 8 years in June, I had a friend who suddenly died of a massive heart attack, a widowmaker heart attack, while he was on vacation with his family. They saw it happen. It was horrible.
Wow. Yeah.
And what our relationship had waned a little bit over the years. We were super, super close. In fact, the first church I was a pastor at is where we met. And as couples, before they had kids, we vacationed together. We were just super close. And he and I had coffee and talked about very deep and important things early on in our relationship. But nothing bad happened. We just started to drift away like friendships can do. We moved like 15 miles away, which isn't a lot, but it was a whole nother city in the metropolitan Phoenix area. They started to have kids. My wife and I never had children. And so we would get together for kind of big birthdays and things like that as the birth of their children. But we would see each other once every couple of years. And then he died unexpectedly. He was 46. And it just got me thinking about how important that friendship was and how I let it kind of slip away. And I remember within days after he died, I thought, well, that's going to be my next book. I'm going to write about him. And I write about him in the first chapter and write about his kids that are adults now in the last chapter. And it's just kind of a full story. So that's how I launched into writing this book.
I see. Yeah. And the name of the book is called Gritty Friendships. And I thank you for giving us some context to kind of where this story came from, which is very cool. But I definitely want to dive into some of the things that you have in this book and really kind of stay on topic, because I feel like if there's anybody that can bring people together, it's you. So
well, thanks.
I think the resume proves it is within itself at this point. So obviously Gritty Friendships is a book about your friendship with your friend, obviously. And does it also educate, like, I think I saw the little brief part of it where it was mentioning it brings purpose and value to male relationships. So this is more about just being man to man and being a little bit vulnerable with that friendship. Yeah,
it's to have deep and meaningful friendships, man to man.
Okay.
It's good for ladies too. I mean, it's generic enough for friendships, but it really is, because I think men are missing the good some of the best parts of life when they're not friends with another man.
Yeah, I think it's always good to have someone to lean on to be able to like talk about things that are very isolated to potential men, right? And I think that
That's
makes
right.
a lot of sense. There's men's trying to be provider for the family, and we're trying to be good fathers, and there's all these different layers to a single guy or a guy in a relationship or whatever. And having some other people to kind of lean on that, well, yeah, I know the same feeling because I'm a man. Like that, I love that idea, and the friendships that can build from that stuff is pretty impressive. I mean, I have a lot of close guy friends, but I want to talk about this kind of aspect with you because my guy group is like maybe 3 to 5 deep, right? That I really open up to about anything. They know about my relationships, my dating history, my past marriage. They know about all the details of my life. But like when you're building a friendship, is there like layers to not exposing too quickly like it is for like, the dating scene potentially? How do you feel about some of this stuff?
Yeah. Well, I think my personal perspective and then what I write about in the book is kind of they're the same but different. I go deep quickly. I always have. In first conversations over a cup of coffee, I ask a lot of questions. That's how you develop deep friendships. That's one of the things that I talk about in the book, asking questions more than you make statements. And so I tend to go deep quickly, but I know that's not the usual thing that particularly men do, because men have a couple of fears. They have a fear of rejection and a fear of vulnerability, and that keeps them from having those deep conversations. But I think that the thing that I say that most men are waiting for someone else to go first. And when it comes to relationships, particularly male relationships, and if you wait for someone else to go first, then all we ever do is wait. And that's the problem, that we don't take the initiative. And it's not that hard to take a little bit of initiative. And and you can get deeper as you go.
Okay.
Like I said, I can tend to go deep quickly, but most of the time, and there's some formulas in the book that I have in there that steps you can take to get there. But I think the biggest step is to just do it, just to take the initiative, because we have these acquaintances of friendships, and male to male as friends, we feel drawn to another guy. We think about him after we meet him. And I even share some funny stories in the book about how I did that at a Orange Theory gym, and then the guy quit the gym, and I never took the first step. And we just hesitate, and we just miss out.
Yeah. It's cool that you kind of open up right away and kind of put yourself out there so that people can kind of build their perspective, I guess, to figure out if it's someone that they want in their circle. That vulnerability and going first, it sounds like you're just taking the initiative to be that guy, which is a great example, obviously. See, I think about that stuff a little bit in the dating pool when it's a guy talking to a woman, friendship, relationship, whatever. I always feel like that's kind of the layer, but like just finding some good guys that are similar to me that I want to hang out with, maybe it does seem like a very challenging topic.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing to keep in mind is that this deep and meaningful male friendship, it does include fun, by the way. So it's not always intensity.
Right.
I mean, we have to allow for the fun, so that initial attraction, things we have in common. But it's just taking steps, and the formula of the book is we start with initiative, then we have some experiences, we have some conversations, and then we start to get into each other's habits and hold each other accountable, and then we pass it on. So there are levels to it, and it's just taking it step by step, and usually. Because men are strivers, we strive for things. Women strive for things too, but the part of striving for men is women have the nurturing strive. They strive to be nurturers, and men kind of leave that part out, and we shouldn't. So we just gotta take that step too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Where do you think the layer comes from? Like, so what are the signs of like someone that legitimately cares about you from a male perspective, as far as male friends? Like, obviously holding each other accountable in certain things, like, hey, you probably shouldn't be gambling, or looking at her when you're married, and things like that. So like, is that kind of the layer that you're talking about? Is that like some signs of this guy legitimately wants me to be a good person?
Yeah, I hate to use this word, but it's sort of like you flirt a little bit about deep things. In fact, in the book, I talk about editor of my book when she was reading one of the chapters about that guy at the gym I told you about. And she said, "Man, it sounded like you guys wanted to date." And I said, "Well, that's kind of what was happening. Not date romantically, but we both. I could tell that he was curious about me, and I was curious about him, and we started asking questions that could have led to a friendship. So, yeah." I'm getting sidetracked. What was the question you asked me?
No, I think you're on point. You're not off point at
Okay.
all. Yeah, you're perfectly. I'm just trying to understand, like, when you write a book like this, you're educating yourself pretty deeply on the topic. Obviously, being a pastor, you have a lot of community around you. You're learning a lot of things that are very biblical in the same topic, right? So what I'm trying to kind of like dive into is like these layers. How do I know that the guy I'm spending time with, we're going fishing together, we're hanging out, we're talking about life together, is like that friend? Like, what are the trigger points? Because he's starting to care about if I'm a good man or not, like the way that I present myself, things like that. Is that the cue?
Yeah, I think that's one of the cues. I think that when you do the flirt, or when you throw something that's more meaningful and deeper, if they respond, just like if you were dating a girl and we're trying to see if you agree enough about things, or if the same kinds of things they think are funny. And not that everything has to be like a twin, because we sharpen each other through our differences as well. But yeah, I think you start to like inside in your heart or in your spirit, you start to tense. You start to not tense. You start to get hints that it's going to go better and that this is going well.
Mm-hmm.
And you just keep. I think you have good signs, and they respond, and then it does become selfless, where you're actually interested in their life, and you're interested in their life getting better, not just for what they're providing for you, but what you're providing for them. So it becomes reciprocating.
Mm-hmm.
It goes both directions.
That makes sense. I mean, I think the male friendships that I have are leaning into different habits or hobbies I have in life. Like, I have one friend that I continually call about, the poker game I was in last night. He's always going to know the game. He knows the kind of headache I'm going through because someone did something horrible to me at the poker table. Like, so I've confided in him, but we've also broken boundaries and talked about personal life stuff and how to get, be a handyman and things like that, like other layers that things that men care about. And then I have another group of guys that are like all business and they're entrepreneurs like I am. And I lean into them to talk about business ideas, and I trust their ability and their feedback. I mean, there's other layers to that, but like, I think all of them generally care in the idea that if I was in a bad place, they would lend a hand. If I needed someone to talk to, they would be like, let's get a coffee and figure this out. A very unique kind of friendship layer to some of that stuff, which I like. But your book is really kind of focused on building those relationships and getting that stuff kind of started. Like, so for people that don't have the existing relationships. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that sure, your friends that have those other things in common, if you had a problem, that you would call them, and that's usually the 3 to 5 friendships that we have that we'd call in the Lanite instead of AAA if we broke down or if our life broke down.
Right.
But the taking an initiative is that we don't wait until things get bad. We're inspecting things in each other's lives before they get bad. It's proactive. It's initiative taking. So you ask questions like, how is your dating life? And in the last relationship that didn't work out, what were the factors that led you to realize it didn't work out? I mean, just some deeper questions about things that have taken place in our life. Or sometimes we see things that we wonder, and that's why you ask questions. You don't make indictments like, man, you lose your temper too quick. You make a question like, man, you seem to get irritated pretty quickly. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
And those are the invitations to go deeper.
Yeah,
and
I think
do it proactively.
Yeah, in psychology, they always say ask I questions. I feel like, that stuff, like same kind of thing.
Instead of pointing the finger at them, you point it back at you. Yeah,
exactly.
So you're kind of dipping your foot into the pool, your toe into the pool, to say, hey, I might have seen something. Do I have it right, or if I have it wrong, I understand, but I'm wondering about this about you. Something that I saw maybe is a thing.
Right.
So it's a little bit of it. Be taking the initiative to do some inspection, some proactive inspection, and not waiting for things to blow up a little or blow up a lot.
Yeah. I think you're hitting on all the right points that I wanted to kind of get at. So, I mean, obviously, when you're making this book, Gritty Friendship, how long did it take you to write it? Talk to me a little bit about your process to really get through it.
Well, that it was funny because when I first wrote about it, I was in such an emotional state as I started writing about the grief over my friend and watching his family and his kids go through what they had to go through to recalibrate their lives. So actually, I stalled out and at about year 3 after flirting with it and writing a couple of chapters that were more about him. And I hired an editor, and he said, "Your story is interesting, but your book isn't."
Oh, okay.
And I was like, "Oh, well, okay. I'm paying you money for this, and so I need to listen." And so that's where I really got into the research component of it, rather than just talking about how I was feeling about the loss of my friend and how important friendships are, but to start to do research about the effects of loneliness. And then there's about how we have a negativity bias and how we can work against that, things that are interesting in our culture today and how that can be reflected or deflected in our relationships with men.
That makes sense. I mean, just kind of being out with people is obviously a good way to overcome kind of loneliness in general, but
yeah,
you must have taken a deep dive into this a little bit further. So can you give me a little bit of the, lonely man advice that you might be sharing in the book as well?
Well, there are plenty of stats that show that loneliness for everyone, male or female, has all kinds of ramifications. So the incentive to not be lonely is great. There's physical, emotional, spiritual ramifications about it, and so you just have from that point you have to take the. Tell me again, what was the question? Sorry.
Oh, I think did I draw a blank too? I'm not sure. No, it was.
That's okay.
I think it was more about some of the tidbits that you. I mean, you had to go down a rabbit hole to really learn about loneliness and some of the stats and things like that to be able to put this stuff in your book. So I was curious about some of those perspectives of just like, that.
Well, I just as I was writing the book, kind of a formula started to emerge. After you take the initiative, then you try to have experiences with each other, because men do that. And I talked in there about windshield time, how men do better when they're not face to face, but when they're like driving somewhere and then you're looking at the windshield rather than looking into the face or the eyes of your friend. And so you have experiences, great experiences. And then the next thing is from there, you start to usually, as you spend more time with each other, have gritty conversations. And there's a formula for that. And then you break into trying to improve, and that's where you get into how. Then we start to talk about each other's habits, and if you want to have good habits, then you have to be accountable for the habits. And after you're accountable, I spend some time on emotional intelligence, because men's go-to emotions usually, when they get emotional, anger is one of our go-to, and why do we do that, and what can we do differently? And then I spend the last couple of chapters. I have my 60th birthday is actually in 2 days, and I can't believe, it's that. But everyone always says you're going to be old before you know it, and here I am suddenly old. And the longevity of my friendships matter to me now, and my legacy matters.
Exactly.
And the cool thing in the book which the question of how long it took me to write, it took me about 4 years. But what was so cool, by the time that 4 years came up, without me orchestrating it, my friend John, who died, his oldest son became an adult, and I shared the story in the last chapter that his grandmother died, and I went and did the funeral, and I said, "Hey, I know you started college and some things didn't work out the way you wanted to. Why don't we have coffee?" And he took the bait. I took the initiative. He took the bait, and we had coffee. And then, as I was nearing the end of the book, he texted me this text about wanting some advice about this, and I've noticed this about you. And I texted back, and I realized that the circle had been complete. And it's pretty moving, actually, for me, because my best friend that died unexpectedly, son, who was 14 when he died, was a man now, and I was passing on what he and his dad and I had done in our friendship. And now I was developing that with his grown adult son. and the whole longevity piece and the passing on your legacy with what's happening. And then, so that's the formula of the book is we want to all know that we matter more than a dash on our headstone. And the way that we matter is through relationship, because we're relational creatures.
Mm-hmm.
We're better in relationship, and we want to pass it on. So there's the formula.
I love the formula. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you feel like everyone needs to be looking for more friendship and not just living life alone? Like,
Yeah.
you not see this everywhere.
Absolutely.
Like, oh, I don't need anybody. I'm very independent.
Yeah.
I can handle this. But like, no, you're probably just sitting at home lonely then, because like,
Yeah.
there's only so much you can get from social media and TV. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
there has to be
Virtual
another layer of human
relationship,
connection. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and when people talk about hope I don't offend people if they listen to this, but like the crazy cat lady or the Unabomber, people that are alone, there's usually some misnomer attached to it, because being alone is not the ideal human condition. We are made to be in a relationship, and we all know we're better when we're in a relationship, when people hold us accountable, when we can't get away with stuff and they want to improve us, or when we feel loved, or when we give love away. We're just better in relationship. Now, alone time's important too, but not living alone. We need to live in a relationship, and we all know it. I mean, we just know it.
I don't think that people get the idea of like the definition of alone time. Alone time is being by yourself, reading a book, going to do that private workout with music in your ear, going to do something like that's what alone time actually is for everybody. It's not about isolating yourself from the world and not letting anyone come in and keep holding you accountable for, being some of the things that you just mentioned. Like it's that kind of stuff where you have to kind of do that. Like I've even seen it in my immediate family, where I'm starting to kind of inject into older people in my life and say, listen, like it's not over yet, kind of deal. Like you don't have to, there's more to live here. And go ahead.
We have legacy. We have a desire to give it away.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think alone time for me, there's two types of alone time. I love being alone. I'm an extreme extrovert, but I have some very strong introverted tendencies. When I come home, I say I'm not a good neighbor. I'm a quiet neighbor. That makes me a good neighbor, but I don't know my neighbors very well. I don't know. I know one neighbor by name, the neighbors next to me. The other people I wave to, and I'm nice. But when I get home, I like to be at home because I do recharge. But when I'm recharging, part of recharging is not sleeping. For me, part of recharging is I'm evaluating my day and trying to detox.
Mm-hmm.
I have a weird analogy. My mother, when I was growing up, used to make spaghetti sauce on the stove every Saturday. And it was really thick spaghetti sauce. And when it was about ready, you could open the lid and you could see these tunnels of where bubbles had formed. But it got so thick that it made like these holes in the spaghetti sauce because it was that thick.
Yep.
And the air worked its way up and like popped, like the bubble popped. And that's what I think quality alone time is. It's when my bubbles pop.
That's cool.
So I go do things that I help the bubbles pop. Like I do triathlon. So I need to train. So I do long runs and long rides and long swims in the pool. And those are when the bubbles pop. Because I very seldom will I just think of nothing. But I think and it's kind of like whatever bubble comes up is what I think about until it pops. And then but the clincher is, if I only do that, I need to talk to people with skin other than my skin. Because otherwise I do what I call vortexing. I like a black hole, a vortex, with just everything. And I get too analytical and I like implode on myself like a black hole. So that's why I need a relationship. I can't just be alone and process my stuff and let the bubbles pop. I have to go tell people about the bubbles that popped, that know me, and can say, no, I think you're right, and that is how you do things. Or I think you're being a drama king there. I think it's a little too much. So there's the alone time to process your stuff, but then you go back to relationship after the alone time to complete the cycle.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. I mean, very cool stuff. I mean, I love the conversation, obviously, of going, deep diving into some of this stuff, because it's a big part of a lot of people's lives. And I always like to kind of same as you, kind of reach and touch people. And I think if like you said, you're the kind of giver in the situation where you're opening up to people and letting them get the full view of who you are and what kind of friendship you were trying to build with people. I think that's something that should be a practice for most people. Just open up and talk a little bit about some of that stuff. You know, you're going to find people that are very unique and very cool, have different life perspectives and different outlooks on things. And that stuff's just going to form who you are. And I think that's super cool. But I also like your analogy of, I mean, I know my alone time analogy is just, no, it's not meant to be sitting by yourself watching TV or scrolling on social media. That's just dead. Like, you're just dead in that scene. You need to do something that's you that can be alone. But I like your analogy of the bubbles popping in the sauce, because I can visually see that, right? Yeah. And I know that's a thing where I'm like, listen, I need my bubbles to pop, and then we can do whatever you need to do the rest of the day. And I completely get that. It makes a whole lot of sense to me. So very cool. Carlyle, I really appreciate you finding some time to like chit chat with me today. The book is called, let me find it here again. I just lost it. Gritty Friendships. It's available on Amazon, also available on Dr. Carlyle Naylor's website, which is carlylenaylor.com.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I'm in there, man. We got this figured out. So I want people to go check that out and see what's going on, and check out this book. And like you had said, it's not just meant for men. I mean, that's the focal point, but really, there's probably a lot of really basic friendship information in here. So, you know, it's a good gift for somebody. Definitely check out the book and make some moves. And I just saw that it was on Kindle for free. So hello, that'll be, that's the way to go right there, guys. So very cool. Well, thanks again, man, for your time. I really appreciate it, and hope you enjoy the rest of that sunny day in Arizona while I freeze in New York.
I will. All right, and I hope you thaw out soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the show. Please take a minute to head over to www.savfair.com and subscribe to our publication.